Welcome. You are joining me right now during Earth Week. Hello, everyone. We're going to give people a few moments just to hop on and get live with us. I do want to give a huge congratulations to our logo winner for Earth Week. We have Zoe up here who got #1, first place for her beautiful drawing. So let's congratulate her. Speaking of that, go ahead and know that you can use the reactions down there. So if you're on your own device, maybe giving a nice little applause or a heart or a thumbs up for Zoe so we can all appreciate these artworks. Great. All right, looks like we got some people popping in. Hello, everyone. Got some visitors in the background. Okay, well, it's a sunny day and we're going to get down to it. All of us are here to learn about the gray whale road trip. And not only are we going to learn about this road trip, but we're going to learn about some unique locations like one I'm in right now called Marine Protected Areas out in Malibu. So first off, my name is Hannah. Boop, boop. And I work for the California State Parks as an interpreter. So that means that I'm out here educating really cool people like you about the beauty and the nature of our environment. And I just want to show you this amazing photo that I took. These are 2 Pacific gray whales. This is the type of whale we're going to be talking about today. And they migrate along the coast every single year. And this was actually taken at Point Dume in Malibu. I got to see these whales with my own eyes. I know, super cool. I always love to share this because this is just an intro about how cool and inspiring these whales are. So where am I? Well, I already gave you a hint. I'm out in Malibu. So we're going to go ahead and look at this big blue dot in the corner of the screen. And this big blue dot is just outside of Los Angeles. And on a good day like today, even though it's a little hazy in the distance, I can actually see the Channel Islands National Park from where I am. And I have a lot of people out there, so why don't you guys put in the Q&A where you guys are at. So where do I have some people joining us from? I'm going to look in the Q&A. All right. We got some people from up north. Excellent. We have some people from down south. Awesome. This is awesome. So this is just giving a representation of how many people are around and also where they're from. And that gives us an idea of what we're looking at. So I had some people say they were up north. I had some people in the inland empire, or in the inland, in the valley, and in the inland empire. So this is just showing us how many people are around, and also if we took our own road trip to these areas, they would be tiny. It'd be a couple 100 miles compared to the thousands upon thousand-mile journey that whales take every single year. So if I was going up north, up to where this first cross is, that would probably take about 600 miles. That'd be about an 8-hour drive. That's a long, long way. But for a whale, they're taking an annual migration. This takes months, and it's thousands upon thousands of miles. So why is Point Dume special? Why are we focusing on this special location? Well, if we take a look at the point here, we can actually see that it's unique. Geologically, this is called a promontory headland. And this headland is unique. It's a landmark. So hundreds of years ago, when explorers were examining the coastline and they were mapping it out to prepare for their navigation, they would get to points like this that were memorable. They were easily identifiable, and you could see them from the shoreline. And Point Doom is considered one of those landmarks. It's easily recognizable from the shoreline, and they continued to map it. And whales use this too. They also use the shoreline to navigate. So they do what's called spy hopping, and they pop up their eyes above the shoreline or the water line so that they can examine the shoreline. And they look for these landmarks to help indicate where they are on their journey. And Point Doom is well known for its whale watching. If I stood on the tippy top here, like very, very top where it's flattened out, I can actually get a almost full 360 view of whales migrating along the shoreline. I can see them coming up from the south, and I can also see them coming down from the north. And they're actually coming up from the south right now. They're making their way up to Alaska. So they're passing all through California, Oregon, Washington to make it up to Alaska. And Point Doom is also well known for their giant coreopsis, which you can see over here today. These are very unique flowers that grow all along the coast here. So they've adapted to this environment. And we're going to learn a few things about these flowers because they're just so beautiful, and especially because they're in bloom right now. So these flowers, you can see the freeway right here, very, very close. These flowers, we're going to learn 3 things about them. So these are perennial, which means they're seasonal. So right now we're in the springtime going into summer, and we're seeing a big bloom of these guys because they are ready to show their flowers off. And their flowers are actually part of the sunflower family. They're also woody, which means not from Toy Story. Woody as in they are really sturdy. So if I took one out of the ground and I broke it in half, which I would never do, there would be all these fibers inside, securing it, keeping it strong. And so if it broke in half, or if there was a strong wind, it was able to stay firm in its position and not break. And lastly, it is a succulent. Now, what does that mean? Well, this means that this plant has adapted to its environment to absorb water in a different way. So it doesn't absorb water all the time from rain because this environment where we're at sees frequent drought. So we don't get a lot of rain. And when we do, it's pretty small. So these plants have learned to actually absorb moisture from the atmosphere, from the air that surrounds it. Because what we get out here in Malibu and Southern California is the marine layer. And luckily, it's not happening today. But you know what? Normally we have it. We normally get it during the early morning, and it moves in through the day, and it's super moist. So it brings a lot of water into the atmosphere around it. So these plants have learned to kind of absorb that water, so it's not dependent on rain all the time. Ba-ba. And Point Doom is not only a really cool promontory headland, it's also a nature preserve, a state marine reserve, a marine protected area, and a California state beach. So these are lots of names, lots of middle names for Point Doom. But you know, what we're going to learn later on is what's going to make it super precious to Malibu. Okay, so we've learned a little bit about the uniqueness and the geology of Point Doom. But now we're going to move into the cultural influence, the uniqueness of the culture in this area. So I will be acknowledging the ancestral tribe of this land, and you may not understand all the words, but just follow along. We recognize and acknowledge the first people of this ancestral and unseceded territory of the community of Sumo, meaning abundance. on their traditional homelands of the Mitsquattacan Chumash people that is now occupied in part by Point Dume State Beach. As guest stewards of this land, we respectfully honor the ancestors and their descendants who are still here and are members of the Babraño Venturano Band of Mission Indians. The word that we are going to follow up with is sumo. Can you guys say sumo? Sumo. We just learned that sumo in Chumash means abundance. So that gives you a hint about Point Dume again. Point Dume is an abundant area. It has lots of food, it has beautiful flowers, it has a lovely, healthy ocean. And sumo was just outside of Point Dume. So Point Dume was a location that the ancestral Chumash would gather at a long time ago, many generations ago. And Point Dume is special because the way that it jets out into the ocean, it gives it a full arc of the sun. So Point Dume experiences the rise of the sun in the east, the blazing sun from the top at the middle of the day, so when it's peaking, and when it sets in the west. We get to see this full arc at the top of Point Dume. So this was an ideal location for the Chumash to gather, especially if they wanted to give blessings to the sun. So they would gather and have dance and singing, and they would come together. And this was a wonderful location for them to experience that community. You can also see some of the things that they would use to explore the Santa Monica Bay. So we see this big canoe, which is called a tamol. Can you say tamol? Tamol. This tamol was made of big redwood planks that they would bring together and seal with a super sticky mixture. And this mixture was made of tar and pine sap, so it was extra sticky. But when it would dry out, it actually sealed and made the canoe waterproof, so they could explore the area and gather more resources. And today, I have a few examples of those resources. And these are considered replicas. These are made by modern-day Chumash tribe members so that we can show you how these were made and why they are unique. So right here we have a rattle. All right. This rattle is very natural, very organic. It definitely was found outside. So if we were to look at this, we're examining it, we're understanding it a little more. This part was definitely from the ocean. This is actually called bull kelp. And this top portion of the bull kelp was the float that would be bobbing around, floating at the top of the water. It would have a long stem connected back to the plant, which actually could be eaten. So they'd pull it out of the water, chop it up, and they'd eat that, but save the float, drying it out, and then putting small rocks or seeds inside to create the rattle. Then they would find a nice sturdy handle to attach, and they would use this during their gatherings for rhythm, for singing, and for dancing. Okay, I have another one. This cute little species is not alive anymore, but it is very beautiful. So this is a red abalone. And it's almost as big as my face. When it had the species inside, there was a small sea slug in here, and he would patrol around the tide pools. But the Chumash were hungry, and they wanted to collect this guy. But what we can learn from the Chumash is that they would only collect what they needed. They believe that you should only collect what you need so that you can preserve for the future. Preserve for 7 generations into the future. So this little guy wasn't just tossed out, it wasn't just thrown away. They wanted to preserve the memory and the spirit of this animal. So they would reuse it. They would repurpose this shell. And we can see that the filter holes that the sea slug would use when filtering water through these holes are covered with that yop mixture. And then small shell beads were inserted. So they're covered. So now this is a bowl where they can drink from, eat from, or gather from. And though it's different, something we can learn from them is to continue to reuse, to preserve, and allow ourselves to respect the spirit and the nature that we have in our local areas. So we can continue to reuse and clean and make sure we repurpose things so that we're not losing the meaning of our environment. Okay, guys. The Chumash also had a relationship with whales. Whales were seen as a symbol of a healthy ocean and a healthy environment out there. So that means that when they would see a whale nearby, that there was lots of food, there was warm water, and these whales felt safe. But sometimes whales would pass away. And though that is very sad, again, we have to remember that the Chumash saw this as a blessing, an offering from nature. So they would want to preserve that spirit and memory of the animal by using everything they could to preserve that. So here we see a traditional home, and this is called an up. Can you guys say up? Up! This up was made of big willow branches and tule reeds that you can find in creek beds. Oh my God, I need a cloud. So these are very localized. They can find these in creek beds and they can use these as natural reoccurring species. So once they created this structure, they would use long insulated tule reeds, which had nice fluffy stuff inside, to layer over the structure. And as they layered, they built up a protection around the home, which made it insulated to keep the warmth in, and it also kept it protected from the elements like rain and wind. But you can also see big bones here. We can see big rib bones that they would collect from the whale, and they would use as extra support in their home. We can also see big vertebrae from the spine, and they would actually use these as furniture. They'd use these as stools in their ops. We can also see other bones used as hooks and spears for getting food out of the ocean. They would eat the meat if they could from the animal, and they would also use the fat or the blubber that could actually seal their animal skins that they hunted and make them waterproof. Okay, so my friends, if you are already taking notes, go ahead and put a portion, maybe a half page of your notes to follow along with me. We're going to be writing whale up and down on your page. And if you're not writing notes, it's okay. Just follow along. So as you're writing your notes, I'm going to let you know that we're going to be introducing our interviewee. But he's way out in the ocean. So once you finish up your notes, I'm going to need some help calling him in. All right. Awesome. Okay, guys. So in Chumash, whale means pahat. So we're going to call in Pahat. I need your help. Ready? We're going to say, Pahat, Pahat. I don't think he heard us. We're going to have to try again. Remember, he's all the way out in the ocean. Ready? Pahat, Pahat. Oh my gosh! He is here! He has arrived! This is Pahat, our 1-year-old Pacific gray whale, joining us here at Point Doom, making a special appearance on his migration up north. And he's going to help us out with understanding more about the gray whale road trip and how whales are super unique marine mammals, and how we are really similar and yet really different. Okay, guys, so my first question is actually for you. If you were to go on that long road trip we were talking about, so if you were coming to visit me out here in Malibu, what are some things that you would need for your trip? If you were in the car for a long time with your family, what are some things that you would need to survive? Go ahead and put that in the Q&A because I'm asking you a question. All right, we would need water. Yes, we would need some H2O. We need to stay hydrated. What else do we need for our road trip? We need food. Yes, yeah, we need snacks. We need to make sure that our tummies are nice and full. My fingers. We also need extra layers because it gets cold when we're traveling. Yes, shelter, definitely. So if we were camping, we'd want to make sure we had a tent. We'd want a sleeping bag, all kinds of stuff. So are you seeing a pattern here? As land mammals, we need all kinds of stuff to survive. If I was to go on a road trip, I need to get an oil change. I need to fill up on gas, get my tires checked. I need GPS. Not to mention, I need a cooler full of drinks, full of food. I need entertainment. I'd want a book to draw. I'd need a tent, clothes. I need all kinds of stuff. But if I was to ask sweet little Pahat here, what are you going to pack for your road trip, his 1,000-mile journey? You have everything that you have for your migration? He is fully prepared and ready to go. So how we're going to learn about this is through the word whale. So we're going to understand, as a marine mammal, how he can handle this migration without a backpack, without a sleeping bag, and all that stuff, because he's adapted and changed over time to be able to withstand this 1,000-mile migration. So let's start with our first letter, which was W for warm-blooded. That's right. Pahat, just like us, has a big old heart that pumps blood throughout his entire body to keep him warm while he's swimming in the cold ocean, just like us. And he also has a 12-inch layer of fat that surrounds his entire body that keeps him warm like an insulated blanket. But it's also used as a food source. So if he can't stop anywhere for a snack, he can actually use his reserve of food to keep him going. All right, next letter. Whoa, dragonfly. H for hair. That's right. Pahat grows hair, but not in the way that you think. Right here is Pahat's rostrum. This is his snout. And on his snout are a bunch of lumpies and bumpies, where super tiny sensors, like whiskers, are. And as he swims, these sensors are picking up on vibrations in the water around him. So he can pick up on a killer whale, a predator out in the ocean so he can scurry off. He can pick up on a big pod of fish that he can jump on. And most importantly, because he's learning to swim, he can sense how close and far away his mama is while he's being curious. Pahat also has a super cool mustache inside his mouth called baleen. And if you remember Finding Nemo, when they're sitting inside the whale's mouth and Marlin is complaining, and we see all these little hairs moving around inside the mouth, that is baleen. And they're big combs inside the mouth at the top of the jaw, and he uses them to filter his food. And it actually really looks like our own fingernail. And it's made of the same stuff as our hair and our skin and our nails, which is keratin. So he's similar to us too. Next letter is A for air breather. Pahat has 2 blowholes at the top of his head, just like our nostrils. They're directly connected to our lungs. So he has to come to the surface and take deep breaths. He can actually dive and hold his breath up to 15 minutes. That's crazy. Don't try that at home, please. And when Pahat surfaces at the top of the water, he releases his hot, compressed air that's been held in for a long time and creates a blow. This blow is so hot that when it touches the surface of the cold water, it creates condensation, which is really similar to steam. He also has throat grooves. This is extra skin on his throat that allows him to take super big gulps while he's diving for food. All right, we're almost done with our notes, guys. L is for live birth. Pahat spent many months inside his mama looking just like this. He was not born from an egg. He came out, pew, immediately swimming and going, oh my gosh, my flippers and flukes are so flimsy, because he had no idea what he was doing. And he had to harden and strengthen the muscles in his flippers and his tail in order to swim. And we can actually see that Pahat's flipper is really similar to our own hands. We have almost the same amount of bones and a very similar structure. But he has learned and adapted to swim, while we have learned and adapted on land. So on land, we're grabbing lots of things. We're using our adaptable thumbs. And Pahat is swimming. He needs long flippers to swim through the ocean. Pahat also has a super unique tail. It's one of the strongest muscles in his body. And you may notice he doesn't have a dorsal fin because he's not a dolphin or a shark. He's a Pacific gray whale. And they have a dorsal hump and a ridge of more lumpies and bumpies. Last letter, my friends, E for eats milk. So currently, Pahat is the size of a Volkswagen Bug. That's a couple 1,000 pounds. But don't worry, I'm really strong when it comes to holding whales. He's also eating 50 gallons of milk per day. So let's imagine that. We're going to open up the fridge, and we're looking inside. And all in the door, front and back on the shelves, is gallons of milk. And you got to drink all of that in one day. Just kidding. He's going to drink all of that in one day. And he can actually gain up to 100 pounds. And he uses his super special eyes to get this milk in the water. Because since it's so full of fat from his mama using her fat reserve, It's actually the consistency of cottage cheese. Because his mom isn't stopping at the grocery store. She's using her blubber to create this milk for him. And he's going to be eating this up to the first year of his entire life. So I'm sure his mama is sick of hearing, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry! All right, my friends, so if you're following along and writing any notes, go ahead and catch up if you missed anything. And then we're going to stand up and act out some whale behavior. Okay, my friends, so let's go ahead and stand up. Boop, boop, boop. All right. Wait, Fahad, I need you. Okay. All right, my friends, let's go ahead and get started. So we're standing up, and if you're in class, go ahead and push that chair in and be respectful. So we're going to put our hands out and make sure we have a nice little circle. We're not touching or poking or prodding anybody. And then once we're standing, we need to create our water level. And when Fahad's swimming, he can't see the shoreline unless he's vertical, because his eyes are about 9 feet away from the tip of his nose. So what we're going to do, boop, 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 is spy hop with him. So we're going to bring our eyes above the water line, and we're going to look around. We're looking side to side. We're looking at the shoreline. It doesn't really look familiar, so let's go back down. Coming up one more time, we're going to examine our shoreline. What looks familiar? Oh, this looks more familiar now. Okay, one more time. Oh, this is Point Doom. I need to get closer. So now, extending our arms out, connecting at the wrists, we're going to slap, 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 slap the surface of the ocean. We're making all kinds of noise, letting other whales know where we are and that there's a party at Point Doom. Slap, 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 slap. And now that we've let them all know, we need to get together and get closer. So we're going to lift up our tail and dive down. Oh, gosh. Lift up our tail and dive down. Look at you. Hi. Lifting up our tail and diving down. We're going to do this one more time. You can do it. Lifting up our tail and diving down. Nice job. All right, now that we're coming back up, we're going to take a deep breath. We're going to take our blow. But before, we need to evolve real quick. So our noses are right here, right? But they need to be up here if we're a whale. So watch carefully. I'm going to evolve. Boop, boop, boop. Fully evolved now. Blowholes on the top of my head. Prepare to be mind blown. Taking a deep breath. We're making a heart shape with our hands. Wow! Good job, my friends. Whew, we're not done yet. Last and most important behavior is bottom feeding. Because first of all, I'm starving. But also, Pahat, after his first year, is going to start bottom feeding on his own. So let's understand how that works. First, let's make our whale mouth. One arm is our lower jaw. And our other arm is our upper jaw. Now we have a mouth. Yum, 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 yum. And what we're going to do is take our deep dive to the sea floor. Ready? Ah! Now that we're down here, we're going to use our rostrum, our nose, to kick all this mud up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're nuzzling our nose into the mud. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And now that it's all muddy and murky, we're going to open our mouth and take a big gulp. And close our mouth. Now that it's full of food, we need to use our tongue to push it out. So we're going to push water and mud, and all that's left is food. Yum, 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 yum. And we lick it off our baleen inside our mouth. Yum, 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 yum. And then we have a nice, full belly. Whew, I have to admit, I got a little sweaty after that, but we're going to continue onwards. Okay, my friends, we can see we did some spy hopping, where we brought our heads above the water and our little eyes were examining the coastline. We were diving and slapping the water, so we were showing how strong our big tails are. We also used our blowholes to practice breathing at the surface. And lastly, we learned how Pahat is going to bottom feed soon enough. Whew, all right, Pahat, let's get back on this. When and where is Pahat going on this migration? Well, this is an annual migration, so it's all year round. So he is constantly on the move or hanging out in some of the best places. So right now, Pahat is making his way up from Mexico, passing through Point Doom for a cute interview, and then continuing all the way up north to Alaska. And this is 13,000 miles. So that would be from wherever you are to New York City and back 3 different times. Imagine, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry for 13,000 miles. I don't know how his mom's doing it. Maybe that's why she let him come on this interview. She needed a break. All right, so Pahat is staying near the shoreline. Him and his mom are staying close to the shore because, remember, he's not a strong swimmer. He's just a year old. He's just a baby. And he's learning how to be big and strong as he navigates the coastline. Because out in the open ocean are predators and big boats that are going to deter them from their migration path. Boop, boop, boop. All right, Pahat, let's keep going. Where are the safest rest stops and best restaurants? Well, he's definitely learning this. He's learning that there are special places along the coast that are protected, that have rules, that have lots of food, that have safe waters, and those are called MPAs. And I'm standing in one, a marine protected area. So the land that I'm standing on, the shoreline, up to 8 miles, is protected. And it shoots out 2 miles into the ocean and actually drops down 2,000 feet to the seafloor, where we have a submarine canyon that does a lot of work bringing upwelling up into our awesome habitats. So this is why Point Doom is unique. It has special ecosystems that thrive, and they need to be protected because we have special guys that come through that need lots of food and need to feel safe as they're migrating. There's approximately 124 marine protected areas all along the coastline. And this is just one in an infinite chain of biodiversity, where each location is allowing these populations to thrive and grow of different species to work together and maybe over time allow them to create more populations in other marine protected areas. Okay, so we are going to look at this photo together. And I want you to use your binoculars. So this is taken from a video. Both photos are taken from that video just a few seconds apart. And I want you to spot the differences. What is different in these photos? What is different in these photos? So maybe we're seeing 2 whales and then we're seeing 1 whale. What else are we seeing? Maybe we're seeing a blow from one of the whales. But there's something specific that I'm looking for. Yes, yes. Maybe we're seeing movement in the water, but there's something special that I'm looking at. Well, I guess I'll just have to say it. I just had you guys looking at photos of whale poop. I know, I got you guys. But it's super important. Whale poop is super important, and it brings us to our last question. Will Pahat always have the same route? And unfortunately, he won't, Because we live in a time of climate change, which means the ocean is warming up, currents are slowing down. So in the ocean, there's natural currents that are cold and warm, and they circulate and they move with the seasons. So they follow those seasons. The reason why these whales migrate is because it gets cold and there's no food left. So when this happens, they migrate. It's a seasonal cue. It's an indicator for them to know it is time to migrate. But if our waters are increasing in temperature, that slows down the current. And Pahat may not pick up on that. He might stay too long somewhere and miss out on opportunities to get lots of food or to meet other cool whales. And that's what's happening, is we're seeing the oceans are affected by these currents. So let's understand some of the cool things that he does to combat climate change. And one of them is being the poop cycle. So Pahat takes deep dives. And when he's doing that, he's pulling cold water from the surface, warm water that's heated up by the sun down to the cold seafloor. So he's circulating it. And then he's bringing cold water up. And this is a natural cycle of him moving warm water down to the cold area, different layers, and then bringing it up. And this is just from him diving. And while he dives, he actually shuts down his digestive system, which means he's just eating lots of food, but he's not making any poop until he's at the surface. And then he releases his poop. But this poop is so full of nutrients that it actually acts as a fertilizer. Yeah, you heard me right. Pahat is a farmer. And it doesn't stop there. So his poop is a fertilizer for a plant at the surface of the ocean. Yeah, I know. We're going to keep going. This plant is called a phytoplankton, and it covers the surface of the ocean, and it absorbs sunlight, and it creates oxygen. But it also absorbs CO2, which is carbon dioxide from our mouth. So what we breathe out, it comes from cars, planes, trains, all industry. So we're saying that Pahat's poop is creating oxygen. Yeah. Every other breath that you take is from whale poop. Yeah, just let that sink in. We're going to take 2 breaths on that. And that second breath came from the ocean. But like I said, it doesn't end there. This phytoplankton that's nice, big, and strong because of the fertilizer that Pahat gave it actually feeds Pahat's food chain. So this phytoplankton is eaten by small fish and amphipods. Amphipods live at the bottom of the ocean in that muck that he stirs up when he bottom feeds. They're like small sand crabs. So he's not only a farmer, but he's farming his own food. And right now we have about 25,000 Pacific gray whales in the area. That's a lot. But you know what? We need a whole lot more if we're going to keep combating climate change with whale poop. So this does unfortunately bring us to the end of our interview. But I want to leave you guys with some cool stuff. I want you to know what you can do for Pahat and for the ocean. So here's a few things. 3 exact. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. So reduce your use of plastic. Reuse what you can, like water bottles. Repurpose bags and containers. And recycle. Pro tip, rinse out your recyclables. They make it a lot easier to recycle. So I just want to thank you guys for joining me on the Gray Whale road trip. And Pahat thanks you as well. Because this is an amazing day and an awesome time to celebrate Earth Week with this unique species that is one of our California state animals. So from me to you, all the way out here in Malibu, thanks guys. I'm going to check the Q&A before we go. Oh, hearts, hearts, hearts. All right, we're looking good. Bye, everybody. Thank you.